Good afternoon, guys. As promised yesterday, welcome to today's training. Today we're going to talk about a specific kind of trauma that I call the love wound or the love trauma. So in codependency and narcissistic abuse, there's typically a singular event that happens to us through the discard, what I call the discard trauma or the discard event, that we tend to shape our identity around. We shape our value around this. We shape our worldview around this event. And more often than not, this sucker affects how we see ourselves as being lovable, as being desirable, as it defines how safe love is for us, how safe it is to feel, to love someone else, to receive love from another individual, and in general, to be loved. That's what I call the love trauma. A lot of times in this event, when we're dealing with narcissists, we're dealing with users or the consumers, this kind of trauma attacks the sense of well-being, the sense of safety, the sense of being okay as we are. So it's an event or it's a message we internalize that makes it unsafe to be who we are because we believe by being who we are, we won't be loved. I'll give you an example from my life because I've been working with this, some things that have come up over the past week and some changes that people have made that have brought this up for me. And one of those things was a message I internalized as a child that basically said, hey, Marshall, you're harmful to other people. We have to protect other people from you. That's a pretty strong, powerful message there. It's something that I was told when my memory says around 4 or 5. That's kind of the essence of it. And I believed it because it came from one of my parents, and I believed that message. I'm like, I'm a bad person. I'm a harmful person. And so my identity, my sense of value, my worth, my confidence, all was shaped by this event. And it wasn't something that they did physically to me. It was what they said to me in response to something that I had done that was actually quite normal and natural for a child at that age to do. But they saw it from a very different point of view, and then I internalized that as the truth. And this wounded my ability to allow myself to be loved, allow myself to love, allow myself to see myself as lovable in general. Really hammered my self-esteem, my sense of value, and I shaped my identity around it, and that's pretty much cut me off from a lot of opportunities in my past towards actually having relationships or friendships that I wanted, but I felt a lot of shame about desiring because I was afraid I would hurt people because I had a desire, right? That is what a love wound is. This is the love trauma where we experience a deep sense of rejection about who we are and about how we show love or that we need love, how we ask for it. Our request for love, our bid for connection there is rejected or attacked in some way, and we've internalized it as a fact about ourselves, a fact about who we are. And that's just why it shapes our identity, is because we've equated that message we got with our identity, with our value, and we've made ourselves around that. We think that that's who we are. I'm a harmful person, right? Rather than looking at it from a point of view of, oh, I did a behavior that someone else felt was harmful. See, that's a very different point of view for taking in my experience. It's a very different point of view than it is Marshall's harmful. We got to protect people from Marshall. And so when we talk about love wound, we're really talking about what we identify with as worthiness, as a value for ourselves. Where do we belong in the world? How do we show up in the world? How will we be received by the world? Is it safe? Is it loving? Is it nurturing? Are we being valued for who we are? Or are we just getting feedback about what we do? Because if we're dealing with people that come from that consumer supply dynamic where the only focus in the relationship is the consumer, the narcissist, so the consumer, the narcissist, or the abuser is focused on them and we're focused on them, and we don't really have a relationship there. But if we're in that dynamic, then we're going to be neglected. And we're going to get feedback from that experience that tells us our love isn't wanted. Our love is tainted, it's shameful, it's undesirable, it's flawed. Does this resonate with any of you guys? Do you find yourself going, yeah, this is what I've experienced, this is what I feel inside of me? And if you feel like, if it resonates, if it clicks and you're feeling inside of yourself like, yeah, I feel shame for the love I have for other people, I feel like my love is seen as disgusting or wrong, then you're absolutely dealing with the love wound, that love trauma. Because it's one of the signals of it. It's, hey, I've got love inside me, but nobody wants it. Everybody doesn't like it. It's yucky. It's like, ew, why would somebody want that from me? That's love trauma talking. And healing love trauma is the experience of coming back into contact with the event that we interpreted as a truth about ourselves. And then we can restructure that and liberate our inner aspect of self, our inner child, from that cage of that shameful cage about our love. And then we can begin to explore the validity, the goodness, the well-being, the joy, the brilliance of our love. See, healing this means we're not coping with it. We're not standing there going, oh, I'll let go of some of the shame about it. It's more like, I realize and I experience that my love is good and wholesome and worthwhile and virtuous. That's the opposite of the love wound. That's love celebration. That's love goodness right there. And that's really where our true identity starts to come through. Because you've got to remember that the discard trauma affects us in 3 specific ways. It attacks our identity. We give that up. We lose connection with our true self. We lose connection in general, both to self and to others. So we got those 2 things. We lose identity, we lose connection, and we lose our sense of value, our sense of intrinsic worth, because it becomes mired in this idea of transactional value, or what's called, transactional value, where we earn our value based on our output. So, and if our love is mired in this idea that it's disgusting, or that it's bad, or it's unwanted, why would we share it, right? We're not going to put it out there and share it with people because we don't want to be discarded. We don't want to be isolated, rejected, alienated, ostracized. We want to be kept. We want to be valued. We want to be seen and loved for who we are. But we're really, if we think our love is disgusting, then we're not going to show that, right? We're going to put out a facade. We're going to put out what we would call the idealized version of love. And that will cover up the shame, and that'll help. We think that'll help other people like us, want us, and then they keep us. But in reality, the real secret to our happiness here, guys, is to shed the meaning we've internalized about our love and reach into the space of its goodness and begin to experiment and explore and ultimately discover that our love is worthwhile, that we are worth loving, knowing, and keeping to ourselves first, that we're a brilliant person, that we're worthwhile, we've got this going on, this is for us, right? We feel it inside ourselves. We like who we are. So some tips on how we can start this process of healing. Number 1, and this is the fastest and quickest way to exit the love trauma, is to actually use the closure technique and liberate that aspect of self from its cage or its prison so that it can begin discovering itself from the framework of love. So we do that through the Get Closure Now system that is open for enrollment right now. That's the closure technique is my 6-step process I take you through, and it meets the core need. 1, the core need is safety, and then it meets the secondary need, in this case, our love being safe and worthwhile. And then we go into a want state and we create whatever the aspect of self wants, and then you're healed. Boom, it's done. So with that specific trauma per se, but so that's one way to do it. That's the quick way. The other way is we've got to nurture out of this. And this can take a long time because we get lost in it. We get lost in analysis and trying to fix it and trying to make it work differently, and trying to force it a lot of times because we want to get out of the pain. We want to get out of the shame. But the nurture process is to look at and reference our sense of love with goodness and with safety and with being wanted. And that's a really great place to thaw around any trauma or any shame that's really intense around our love. So when I was healing my love wound, I was getting there and working with my love trauma. This is one of the major things that really came up strong for me, is that I had an immense amount of shame, an immense amount of hate towards myself. I had to give myself time to warm that up and let it thaw into what it really was, which was just grief and confusion and frustration that I was treated the way I was for doing something that was very natural and very normal, and then was suddenly wrong because somebody else decided it was. And it was confusing for a 4-year-old to be told that they're a dangerous person because, they want a hug or they are curious about life or anything like that. It was very warping that way. And so it took time for me to thaw that. And then I went through the technique and it helped really liberate that little boy into his own sense of confidence, which started resulting in more peace about who he was, more indifference towards other people liking and approving of me, more confidence in just being me, just showing up, a lot more resilience to when critical feedback came back to me about something somebody disagreed with and how I did something. And so that's a big deal right there for us. If you're coming from a narcissistic abuse background, criticism is an enormously powerful event in our lives because it triggers that huge fear that we're inadequate, that we're ultimately not lovable, that we are just undesirable and we deserve to be discarded because somehow our flaws cause this person to not like us or something. And in reality, when we become indifferent to criticism, we become really powerful to our own value because we realize that criticism isn't always relevant. Most of the time it's not. And if criticism only has relevancy if it's addressing a behavior and it's coming from someone that, one, is asked to give that feedback to you, and two, that we trust. Because not all criticism is valid, and generally I audit my criticism based on who I'm getting it from rather than where it's coming from. Because I rather trust the source than the message over that. So I trust the source first, then I look at the message. I just don't take the message in and then run with it. Codependents do, because a codependent wants to be liked and it wants to be approved of and included, and so they'll take all criticism as signals to change themselves so they become more desirable to the target, so they be kept, right? So healing that liberates us from that cycle. When we get really in contact with the goodness and the well-being of our love, our life becomes free. Our anxiety drops. Our fear of being discarded goes away because we don't need them to validate us anymore. We have our own identity, our own connection, and our own value. And then we can go out into the world and build reliable, stable connections and friendships, bonds, and healthy, fun relationships without their approval, without their need them to be there, without their anchor, because we're anchored within inside ourselves. So if you find yourself struggling with love trauma, and it shows up like this: you feel shameful for what you feel. You feel shameful for having love and you want to share it. You feel shame receiving love or that kind of attention from others. And you feel shameful for wanting to share love. So you're shameful, in general. Sharing love is shameful. Nobody wants your love, that kind of thing. And then it's shameful to receive love. You don't trust it. You feel like you're going to be hurt by it, or it's not true. It's like, why would they love me? Why would they want me this way? Because we can't see our own value because the shame's in the way of that. So if you're dealing with those three kind of things, those reflexes towards people's affection or affection towards yourself or sharing affection with others, then you're dealing with that love wound. We can heal that through the closure technique. We can also begin healing it through the closure, the codependency confidence system, the heal processes, largely focused on reshaping the love wound outside of the technique. But ultimately, you're going to need to clear the core trauma, regardless of what you do. So I highly recommend with love trauma, you start with the Get Closure Now training so that you can get that out of the way, and then that'll maximize all the healing you do from there forward, whether it's with me or a therapist or a different coach. Get that love wound healed. You can move on in your life very, very quickly. Clients that have closed their love wound and liberated from it have gone on to have vital, fun relationships. Several of them have gotten married recently. They're no longer hooked on the narcissist. They're not attracted to them anymore. They're free from them. They've also found more purpose and fulfillment in their life. They're just happier. And that's my big goal, guys. That's what I do. I help people find happiness after narcissistic abuse and codependency. That's my take, my magic right there. So if you want that in your life, you want healthy relationships, friendships, you want to get back into life, be free of that shame, then apply for your spot and Get Closure Now. We close in just under 2 weeks. Currently, we have 16 seats open. There's a 20-seat max on this, 20-seat limit. Get in fast. This sold out last time within 3 days of the closing date, so it goes quick. Got 3 other people asking for seats. We'll see if they close on it or not. So get in here fast. Do it now. Be free of that love wound so you can actually start receiving love in healthy ways, sharing your beautiful and brilliant love with others, and knowing and feeling your own brilliance and love today. Okay? Thank you, guys. If you have any questions about this, just comment below. I appreciate you being here. And remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And if you want to apply for Get Closure Now, you go to www.healyourtraumanow.com. See you in a consult, guys. You guys have a good night, and I will talk with you tomorrow. Bye-bye, guys.